Hello, everybody. Good morning, afternoon, evening, depending on where you all are in the world. And welcome back to another segment of the hallway track. Ha! That sounded good, didn't
It did.
it?
It was a nice intro. I've been waiting for this for so long because
Right?
that minute is like the minute intro. You're like, yeah, I'm gonna go chill out, and then like the last 10 seconds, I'm like, I want to start now.
Right? Let's get it started. Let's get this party started. That is awesome. Today on the hallway track, we are going to chat with our hackathon winner of most promising idea, Dhruv Kanojia. Welcome.
Hi
Thank you
guys, hello
for
everyone.
How's it
joining us.
going?
Yeah. Okay. So we want to get into introductions. We want to let you introduce yourself, Dhruv, but let's go through some pre-flight checks, and then we will get this show on the road. How does that sound?
Sounds
Cool.
great.
Sounds good. Sounds good.
If you're not following us on Twitter, like, what are you really doing? You go and follow us at Chef on Twitter. It's easy. You will find our live streams as they come, or advertisements about our live streams, webinars, plan outages, etc. And Dan's Twitter, follow him because he talks about DevOpsy stuff and Brexit, right?
Yep. And I'm actually streaming over on Twitter at the minute as well
Oh,
because
sweet.
I've connected our restream because I freaking love restream. I've connected our restream over to my Twitter, and then at some point we'll do Chef's
So
Twitter as well. So we're just going to see how these new channels work, and if they don't start working, then we'll just stop using them. But
okay.
yeah, we're streaming over there as well.
Hey, all Dan's Twitter followers. Also follow me on Twitter to really like just see reposted chef stuff and maybe hear the live streams a little bit earlier. That's cool. That's cool. I'm trying to get more active. I say this every time, but like one day I'm actually gonna follow through on being more active on Twitter, you guys, and you should be following me so you are there when it happens. Druv, what do you post on Twitter?
Nothing, it's mostly reposts from I'm developer and some other developer memes. That's pretty much what I do on Twitter.
Oh yeah, developer memes are awesome. Like
Yep.
that's a really good way to stay on topic, but also, be funny.
Yeah, exactly. It's I mean you wouldn't think like you'll actually learn something from there, but you do. And especially on Reddit bad code, it's a life changer.
For sure. For
You have a
sure.
new follower.
Hey, nice.
Yes.
I was like, mean for the meme, so we're all good. So
Right, right.
Yep.
Here for the memes. And our community Slack. If you're a practitioner, whether you're new, whether you are experienced and well vetted, you need to be on our community Slack because there's a wealth of knowledge from some very knowledgeable folks. If you ever get stuck on a project or something small, ask the questions. You'll generally get near real time answers. Depending on who's online at the time, right? Like, because Dan's always answering questions.
yeah. Usually, like me trying to fix my own stuff. I'm like, I broke this. Oh, I probably did. Sorry. Yeah.
And we also have our engineering team on Community Slack as well to answer some questions in our architecture team. So like that's pretty awesome. Like, it's truly in the open source spirit, having the folks that know the things online to answer the questions. Discourse, also some more forum style communication. You get to answer your questions more long form questions that you may have. Think of it as like a Stack Overflow. We also have notes from our community meetings and releases as they come out as well. So let's get into our topic of the day. Let's talk about one push. Well, first, actually, let's have you introduce yourself, Druv. Who are you? Where you live? Like, tell the people. The people want to know.
Yep, definitely. So I I I born and brought up in New Delhi, India, and I currently work in Bangalore, India, as a senior software dev with Tech Systems. been doing that for past 3 plus years now, and I am a full stack and a jack of all trades, and now just trying to master each and every other area. And Chef's DevOps hackathon was something that got me into, like, okay, let's try the DevOps and test the waters. So yeah, that's pretty much it about me. And I love open source, and I've had some of these libraries running there and some command line tools, and I just try to give back to the community as much as I can. Unfortunately, I've been busy for past few weeks and months, so it's not there as much, but yeah.
Awesome. Awesome. And you're like new to DevOps,
Oh
right?
yeah, very new. I'm a baby, I can say. Very new.
Yeah, I think that's great. So for those who don't know, um, we did a hackathon or at the tail end of ChefConf this past year. And normally we do hack days, right? But this was a real deal virtual hackathon. We had some great prizes, over $60,000 in prizes. Um, and it was a 6 week long hackathon where the only real rules were that you had to use chef products and you had to solve a problem for good. You had to create something for the good of DevOps or humanity. So it was very broad, right?
Yeah.
We got some really really great submissions. Dan, I mean, we could talk about the fact that we were really like trying to figure out what folks were going to submit, right?
Yeah, we didn't. I mean, I think so the 6 weeks leading up, well, the 6 weeks during the hackathon, we were like, yeah, someone will come up with a really idea, like nervously going, we have no idea what they're gonna do.
Right.
They'll maybe make something with Habitat, and then they maybe make something with Infra, or maybe do something with. We had no idea. I mean, long and the short of it is, we had no idea what people were gonna do. We were super excited because we saw the lots of entries flood in. We never expected to see something like One Push come in, because
Right.
like we never thought, well, we'll see a UI on top of a DevOps tool. Like, I just never expected to see something. And also, I really like the amount it's polished as well. I'm just trying to big. I'm not even trying to big you up at this point. I really really like this entry. It's one of my favorites.
Yes.
It was probably
Nice.
my favorite from a UI perspective, which we'll definitely get into in a bit. Like, the whole UI thing is we I think we chatted about it for 15 minutes before the stream, because
Right.
Yeah.
we
Yeah.
went into a very deep dark hole there with UI streams and with like UI and UX and this kind of stuff. It's super hard,
It
but
is.
we never expected to see something like this. So it was pretty cool.
Yeah, absolutely. Like, why don't we talk about that? Why don't we talk about One Push? Why don't you tell us what One Push does and kind of like the premise behind it?
Yeah. So, like I said, I'm pretty new to DevOps, even though I've like just trial and errors. So I wasn't sure what I'm going to build. Now I was ready to pass upon this opportunity, but then I thought, like, okay, let's think about it, how I can build, use this. So Chef, I am coming across Chef for the very first time, so it was difficult for me to think, what's what. So one push is a very simple application. It's something that we've all seen in our IT industries at some point. You have your IT team, and let's say somebody joins on a new project, right? They will have certain set of tools that they'll need to install. Now, this scenario is very common in service-based companies because projects will change from time to time, correct? So I saw my people from the IT team from my company. They'll be people will be running around them like, hey, can you install this? Because you don't have admin access for all the devices, correct? So I thought like, okay, it's been hectic for them, and especially in this COVID time, right? COVID-19. So
Mhm.
everyone's been working remotely, and it's been much more difficult for IT teams to secure their infrastructures and their machines, not just theirs, ours as well. You wouldn't really want people downloading random stuff and getting infected with the network, correct? So that's when I thought, okay, to ease to their pain to some extent, why don't I use this Chef infra and the workstation to push all these updates down? So what you can do with this, the idea behind this one whole one push app was you take your laptops, like let's say I am working as I'm an employee, I need that, right? So I have a desktop or a PC or my laptop, anything. I have a machine. You add it onto the workstation as a node, and IT team will have the area, they'll have that admin panel where they can add the nodes, and they can also push and run the run list for specific projects. So the idea was pretty simple. You maintain an organization, or you say you maintain a project name for some project, and you have run list for each and every project. Your run list, if you are familiar with the Chef already, run list, you can plug in, and
Right.
you can handle it on your workstations yourself. It's pretty easy.
Yeah.
They'll run the instructions, set of instructions, and you can code for each and every operating system you have. Now the thing is, this is the easy part, because you have to set it up just once, right?
Hmm.
And the task from there on becomes easier for the IT team. Let's say Dan tomorrow joins the same project as me. Now the IT team doesn't have to go and manually install and push the updates everywhere. They can just add Dan's node, just click the run list for that particular node, and that will downstream all the updates and all the patches onto Dan's system. This process would have taken 30 minutes an hour, depending on the set of tools you need to install, to hardly few minutes and 2 or 3 clicks. So that was the whole intent behind this one push application, to simplify things for IT team and to save everyone's time.
Nice. Yes. I mean, and that's kind of like the overarching goal of DevOps in general, right? To like automate
Yep.
more, save time. So yeah, I think this is, I mean, it really speaks to those principles, right?
Yep, yep.
And then
And I'm a lazy person, and I love automating. So the first
shout
thing,
out to
first
Jeff
was my thought.
and
Yes,
all the lazy
yes, the last
developers.
last stream. Yes.
That is
So,
awesome. That is
yeah.
awesome. So was this your first hackathon, Drew?
No, I've been doing hackathons for quite a while. My first hackathon was in back in 2016. Yep. That was back in 2016. So I've been doing. So I have this goal, it's okay, it's a weird goal that I have. Like every year I have to participate in at least one hackathon. It doesn't
Okay.
matter if I win or lose, that's fine, because hackathons are the opportunities for me to try out something that I wouldn't normally do, or
Hmm.
normally wouldn't get to do, right? So once you have all these resources available, so I feel like this is the best time to pick anything and start into it. That's how it is. So I do it every year. At least one is my goal. It's something
Okay.
to learn every year.
So did you do any, so was chefs the only one that you picked last year? I mean, it's okay if it wasn't, but I just want to
No, yeah.
How many did you
it
end up doing then?
Right.
Last year I did just two of them, and chef for the very first one that I picked up.
That's cool.
Okay.
That's
Second
cool.
one was again. Second one was also for Amazon, but it involved automation itself. So
Oh.
Right.
that's
Yeah.
where I
Yeah.
targeted, because I was already in the mood from chef for
Mhm.
automating and stuff, and I was like, okay, mind is hot. You got the idea. Let's try to build something else with that same ideology.
For
Yeah.
sure. So like, okay, Dan, and you can speak to this too. Like the goal for this hackathon was to inspire new people to chef, to DevOps, to build and to kind of like help explore this, help these new folks explore the space. I mean, I'm coming from a full stack development background and not necessarily DevOps, so I could relate to the goal for sure. Um, but what we did find, we found that we had like we our the people who entered, the participants. That's what I was looking for. The
Yeah.
participants
Yeah.
experience gamut, right? Like we
Yeah.
have folks that were very experienced, that have been doing DevOps for like 10 years. And then we have folks that were brand spanking new, like you.
Yeah.
So like can you talk about that journey? Like so when you saw the or did you have interest in DevOps before? And talk about the journey from there and from having no experience and saying, "Hey, I want to get involved," and then to seeing the opportunity and the uh, Automate for Good hackathon. Kind of talk us through how that went
Yep, yep.
to
Okay.
winning.
Yeah. So the thing is, like I said, I love automatic things, right? So a
Mhm.
CI/CD was something that I got into when I was developing my open source tool. So it's been like, it's been hectic because I push an update, right? So I have to compile that library in all these other environments and push it. So that was where my pain started. I'm like, no, I am coding and I'm just making the binaries. I'm happy for the environment I'm on. I cannot push it for everyone. And that was the time I started looking, how can I automate this? So, I don't have to worry about any of the distribution problems. So that was the time when I first got to know about CI/CD. And once I found out like, all these configurations are there, it's a very interesting field. Okay.
Yeah,
It's
nice.
and especially for people who are lazy and who love to
Mhm.
automate. Honestly, it's I mean, I cannot stress this enough. It's an interesting area on its own.
For
Might
sure.
seem like easy, but it's a very big one. It's you once you start into it, you'll see how deep it is, right?
Hmm.
So that's where I started from. And the ever since the day I actually started writing code, or actually started writing code, my intent has always been to build something that helps somebody out.
Right.
And I mean,
There you go.
to to I mean, to solve a problem, that's something, to ease someone's pain. I Even if one person uses my tool or anything that I've built, right, and if they are happy, I am more than happy. So that's like, both of these things, they matched for me. And
For sure.
this was that golden opportunity. It was, like, you get DevOps that I've been trying to work on for a long time, that I've been delaying, right? And automate for good. Do something good for people. People can
Right.
actually utilize and be happy about it, right? That's how I actually, this idea just came to my mind. I don't even know. I've been thinking about it for a long time, like, okay, what can I do with Chef, right? Because
Mhm.
it was a very, very steep learning curve, especially for me, because I had never worked with Chef. I had not even heard of it, right?
Wow.
I read the documentation. I went through it. I'm like, okay, getting there. It's
Yeah.
just not entirely
Right.
sure. I mean, it's not easy to grasp everything in one go, right?
For
I think
sure.
I came across. I think, not sure who wrote that article. It's from Chef itself, to setting up Chef in 30 minutes or something. I don't remember the exact
Oh, it
title.
might have been Tonello. I'm gonna
Oh,
guess
it
it's
probably was.
is probably
Might be.
John.
I don't remember the person's name. Yes,
Mm,
man. And that was the enlightenment for me. And I spent few minutes. I read through it. I didn't execute anything. I just read through it. Then the thing started making sense to me. Like, oh, okay, this is what it actually does. And it's and that's how I started getting the idea. I'm like, okay, we can build this. Can try. Let's see what we can do.
So I've posted
Yep,
a link to that
this is the
article
one.
on
Yep.
Twitch and
Yes,
stuff.
I
It
I,
was
I
John
see
Tonello.
that from the URL. Yep. Yep.
yeah, awesome. Can you like put that in Slack so I can put it on LinkedIn
Yeah, let me
too?
throw it over
Because
to. I'll throw it on LinkedIn
so,
then.
Thanks, John. Thanks, John. I still have this URL bookmarked somewhere in my Telegram and saved somewhere, because
Yeah.
this was
yeah,
the starting point for me. This was
John's
it. Yep.
great with those, like with the tutorial videos, the articles. He's great with those. I think he's well
and and
knowledge.
and I love like how it was written in such plain words, plain English, you can say. Like,
Right.
if I was able to understand it right, then I'm sure everyone can understand it. It's pretty simple, man. Thanks a lot, John. That was an amazing article. And yeah,
Yeah,
that was
John's
pretty much
really
on how.
clear at getting a really hard idea across.
Mm-hmm.
Hmm.
And
Yep.
I don't understand this thing, and then John explains it. You're like, oh,
Oh, it wasn't so bad.
oh, okay, it's pretty nice. Yeah.
Yeah.
What I've
I,
learned is in the transition from full stack to DevOps is they're concepts that you just feel like are so cumbersome to understand, right? But they're really just not. They're simply not. Like they sound overwhelming, but
yep.
when you have it explained properly, and I guess that's the same way in all things in IT, like
Yep.
and engineering in general. I mean, when you kind of get it broken down, like you need to talk to me like I'm a 6 year old. I need you to teach it to me like I'm
Yep.
six.
Yep.
And John does a good job at that.
Yep. It's like mathematics. you hate it, but once you understand something, right, you know how to use that formula. You're like, I'm going to solve this whole book, right? So it's like
Right.
that. Once things start making sense in your mind, you're like, okay, it's not
Right.
as uh, weird as it seemed, right? It's yeah, true.
Exactly.
Yeah, there was I think I was talking to John about the template resource the
Right.
other day, and then I explained something about the way you put variables into the template resource, and then I realized that it's just a method, and I was like, a method with named arguments. And when I explained it that way, if you understand what named arguments are and what methods are, which are a general programming concept, you're like, oh yeah, so that the whole syntax makes sense now.
Right.
Yeah.
And then
Right.
if you understand how classes and modules and that kind of syntax work in Ruby, then you can understand how the imports work in Ruby, and you're like, oh, all of this makes way more sense.
Yep.
Like suddenly, like oh, this whole recipe is like ingested in this particular way, and this is what happens, and then you're like, oh no, suddenly like your face is filled with like code.
Right.
It's
It's
just,
like
it just,
it's
yeah,
like the terminal. It's like the terminal
yeah,
just
that's
Yes.
kind of
exactly what it. Yeah,
you're like, what? It's like not like the light bulb coming on. It's like the terminal
Yeah.
yeah,
like
You
running and not
you
putting
feel like
out
you're in Matrix. You feel like you
exactly.
can understand the Matrix. It's all going, and you're like, oh yes, that's
Yeah,
I get everything. I get it all.
right.
and there
I
is the woman in the red dress.
exactly.
Yes.
Exactly.
Yep.
Exactly. So, okay. Have you done since you've been doing hackathons since 2016, you said. So you've probably done both virtual and in person.
Yep. Yep.
Okay.
Yeah.
So tell me what your preference is. Virtual
Hmm.
or in person hackathons?
Okay, it's weird coming out from a person who doesn't really who'd rather lay on the bed. I would prefer in-person hackathons. I love them. I mean, the whole
Okay.
vibe is different, you know.
It is.
In
Yeah,
virtual, you are there, and if you're sitting across, right, you see our very first hackathon, right? When we were just college students, like in second year of our engineering.
Hmm.
We made it to finals of one of our government's hackathon. We went there, and there were like 150 other teams,
Wow.
150 teams, and around like three people average on every team. Maximum was four. We were the kids, okay, and we saw that the atmosphere was different. We had professionals with 15 years of experience working there, and we were like, this is what we want to be. This is where we want to be. So that
Yeah.
whole vibe is different. You know, it's in-person hackathons. They are amazing. That experience is unbeatable. You just can't.
yeah.
Understood.
I think when we last talked about it, I think we were saying, well, could you do a hybrid approach? So
Oh,
could you get all these people in the room together and do that? Because there's that first bit where you're trying to get all the ideas together in the
right.
and it's that mixing pool of what you're trying to do, and then at
Brainstorm.
some point you want to go away and actually code it.
Right.
You want to just not be under like. Sometimes the pressure is good,
Yes.
but sometimes like 6 weeks is also pretty cool, or
Yes,
6 days is pretty
Yes.
cool,
Pretty
rather
cool.
than
Yep.
6 hours.
Yep.
that's true. That's
It's-
true. There's a balance there. I think, like, personally, now I have not participated in an in person hackathon per se. But I do know that when, a lot of great, talented, brilliant minds come together, magic happens. And it's something about like I can say that. I mean, even from the perspective of conferences and and this is why kind of why we named our show the hallway track, because that's one of the things that you miss in going to conferences. Like you miss like just interacting with folks and having
Yeah.
these like conversations that are not really about the topic at hand, but even just like digging in people's minds.
Yeah. Yep.
Um,
That.
that's the magic that we miss with
Yes.
with
Yes.
virtual everything, right?
Yep. Correct.
But I think if we do a hybrid approach, it might be
Yeah. It
the
might
best.
be. See, they all come with their own pros and cons, right? I mean,
True,
thanks to the virtual hackathon, you can engage a broader audience,
true.
because for the physical ones, you'll kind of limited to a certain country or certain state, right, or certain area.
True.
So hybrid would be the best, right? That's
Yeah.
Yeah.
best of both worlds, right?
So on like ChefConf, if we were going to do a hybrid, we would probably do like everyone comes to ChefConf in X city, wherever it is in that year, and then we would like miss a bunch of people who were like, "Well, I'm not going to ChefConf because I'm not thinking about that thing." So you get like you lose a bunch of people, like you said.
Right. That's
So
true.
you almost end up with like so the ChefConf hackathons don't usually end up looking like hackathons or hack days. They're usually like people
Okay.
going like, "Oh, I've got this problem. Should we fix it? Should we have a beer
Mm.
instead?" And then we go have a beer instead.
That is so true. That's what's weird about the look, our community is great at like we're great at working and also shooting the shit.
Yeah, we
Yeah.
really are.
We're supposed to
All
say
right.
that?
I mean, it's one of those
Too
things that
late.
if you do it at the end of a conference as well,
Right.
and I don't know about you, or like, if I'm in the conference, I'm in the conference, and my brain is like working without knowingly doing it. Like all the interaction and that kind of stuff is exhausting. So yeah, I just need to go and sleep for an hour, and then I'll
Yeah.
go out and party or whatever. But
Right. I don't know, those chef parties are different.
yeah,
Yeah.
yeah. Well, wait, the days when Nathan Harvey was around, he was the party animal. He is a party animal. He would get kicked out at 4 a.m. kind of thing. You're like, and then he would come
Wow.
in to the venue and MC in the morning at like 8:30 in the morning. Like, Nathan, have you slept yet? And he's like, I mean,
Wow.
I had about half an
Who
hour.
needs sleep? Sleep is for weak people.
He's just he was mad. It was a machine. He was a machine, and it worked. It was really weird.
For sure.
But
I don't
yeah,
know. Oh, go ahead.
go on.
Well, if you were gonna be, I was gonna ask another question. I was gonna like start to poke the bear a little bit. So, like, if you were gonna like stay on that topic, like, go ahead and finish what you were gonna say.
No, I've lost my train of thought now. I'm
Oh,
not sure.
okay.
Actually, I'm not sure there was one.
Oh, so Druv, what's your favorite CI/CD tool and why?
Yeah. So far, it would probably be Travis CI. Sorry, Share. It's going to be Travis CI for now.
Okay,
I
tell
mean,
us
once I
why.
start getting into it was very simple for me to start ahead with. I mean, simple
Hmm.
in the sense you can say there's that nostalgic attachments, you can say, right? That's the very
Yeah,
first CI CD tool I used, right?
It's something
It
about
has
that,
its own pros and cons. They all come with, right?
for
But yeah,
sure.
yeah. And from the GitHub, right, I saw the easiest integration there. So that's why it just worked out for me, because all the projects that I was, following and looking into, everybody had that Travis CI going on. And that's why it was, easier for me to pick up, because that is something that I've seen thousands of times. Even I didn't understand, but I've seen that config file thousands of times, right?
yeah.
Right.
So that's the thing. So that's why
Familiar.
Travis CI, it's going to be there. It's not a simple reason, but yes, it would take a backseat at a place where I would need to do much more than just building and deploying the tools. So I think at
Gotcha.
that point, Chef would be the thing that could give me an added edge, right? Because
Hmm.
it's not. I mean, Chef, if you think about it, it can handle all these bigger workloads and multiple scenarios that see Travis CI, at least for me, it wouldn't, you know, Travis CI wouldn't be able to do what I built with one push, right?
Right. Right. Right.
No
Absolutely.
shade thrown. I don't want to throw any shade, but
No,
that's, I mean,
this is
Yeah,
a
no,
safe
that's what
space.
I wouldn't call Chef a
no,
CI/CD tool.
it's for, yeah, it's for the people who love Travis CI CD. That's, you might be able to pull it off, but I can't. And
Yeah, no,
what I
so
will be able to do, yeah,
I wouldn't call Chef a CI/CD tool per se. It's more of a configuration management
yes,
tool.
Right.
yes.
And Inspec is a testing tool and all that kind of other stuff. I kind of think
Hmm.
the kind of Travis would probably like fight it out with like who would you say GitHub
GitHub
Actions,
Action.
and
Yeah.
I have a soft spot for Circle CI, even though I no longer use it because it didn't have enough free minutes, much like Travis.
Mhm.
But I really like the UI and where it's going, and a bunch of other really cool stuff. There's also lots of other things that are kind of like similar to Circle CI. but you can
Yeah.
bring your own builders and that kind of stuff. So I think bringing your own builders is pretty cool. I think whatever CI/CD tool you you end up needing as a company, I think the ability to bring your own builders is pretty cool, because then you can be like, oh, here's a builder and it's got all the credentials I need to do X, Y, or Z on it, that kind of stuff.
Right.
So Chef uses BuildKite underneath the hood to build their products.
Okay.
And BuildKite's pretty powerful. It's pretty
Build-
sweet.
Like there is no comparison with Travis and Chef. They have their own pros and cons, right? If it's something simple as what I'm achieving on my GitHub right now, GitHub Actions or Travis CI would be the thing to go. But if I
Yeah.
want something much more complex, or if I want much more control of the whole workflow of things, then I think Chef would be the best tool in a longer run, if you see, right? Because scaling in this one, I see it's pretty easier. Scaling is also an option when you start doing these things, right? So I would still
Yeah.
have much more control on Chef. That's what I felt when I was working on this. Correct me if I'm wrong, Dan, if you think.
I think maybe we're crossing the streams a little bit
Mm,
with the usage of the tools, maybe.
yeah,
But
yeah,
that's
that's
cool.
that's what I feel like. Yeah,
Yeah. But
Yeah,
like, I don't know. That's like all in learning, right?
yeah.
You
I mean, this is the thing. Like we have a bunch of new people who are.
know?
Some people are really new to CI/CD. Some people are like pick an area. Like I mean, let's go back to your tool a second. Like I am terrible at Angular, laughably bad. And you were like, yeah. So I just sat there and did this for 3 days. Is it 3 or 4
Right.
days? And so when you
Right.
told me
yeah,
how long
just
it
3 4 days.
took you, you're like, yeah, yes, it took me. Oh, it was like a really long 3 days, and I was like, no, it wasn't. That was not
3
three. That's not
days.
3 days. Isn't
Just like
long.
real quick.
it it
That
took
was
me 3 days, Dan, because I've been spending 3 years on that.
oh, exactly, yeah, right. So like, I've
Exactly.
got a demo later on, and it's a nice demo. It's done a bunch of stuff, and it like
Yeah.
when I got it working and like compressing all the time took me about 5 hours, and you're like, oh yeah, it's not actually that long, but it felt like a lot longer. And if you don't know where all the parts are and you haven't got all the pre-existing experience,
Hmm.
then yeah, it's
That's true.
super hard. But either way, like the app looks really cool. I think
It does.
I think both those things speak to like reusable components. So like a lot of your UI, you said you used a lot of reusable components in the UI, didn't you?
Mm-hmm.
Because the
I
UI is like
don't
the
remember
thing that
this.
won me over
I
on the
have
UI is.
I would have tried to wherever I could, but since I was, again, like I said, I was in a hurry. I wasn't really thinking about how I can keep the code as clean as possible. Because I had 3 days, I had to set up the Chef servers, get that backend thing working and up and
Yeah.
running, and I had to do the UI. What I've built is fairly simple, and that was something that I was going for. Because if you give user and you bombard user with all these options, right?
Uh-huh.
True.
No, it's the biggest red flag, and I mean, you
Right.
wouldn't really want to see all those options, right? You'll just be interested in the ones that you are actually going to use it. So that's why I just wanted
That's
to
really
keep it.
interesting because like so one thing we've kind of doing internally with policy files, and so you can have like a million different ways of using pick a tool, and let's say Travis. Like, you can use Travis in a million different ways, but there are recommended best practices, or not best practices, but like here's the easy path
Mm-hmm.
through. Wait, so you just gone like, look, you've got two configurable things. Like, give me your node info and a group to put it in, and that's all you're getting. And that's really nice because, like, for your users of this app, like that's all they need. Like, I want to add a node, and I need to know the minimal amount of stuff to get on that box as much as possible, really.
Yeah.
Which is pretty sweet, actually, because then people haven't got to think about it. They're like, well, yeah, I know what. Okay, I click this button, and then I click the next button, and I click the next button, and we're all good. Like
Yep.
when UX, like that's a really nice UX. Like, and UX goes for CLI tools, it goes for
Mm-hmm.
like
Yep.
web development tools, like all desktop, all that kind of stuff.
It's
Is
everywhere. It's
like how
everywhere.
does
Right.
that like how do you give people like really good experiences without doing like, because I think if you give people too much choice, they're like, oh, now I need documentation.
Yep.
Yes.
Oh, now I need
Exactly.
this thing,
Yeah.
and I guess for every tool, and sometimes you need to give people all of the options because
Sometimes you do.
because actually all the options are turns out like you have 100 different customers and they use it in 98 different ways,
Yep,
That's
and
definitely.
that's just your customer base. But if you're
Correct.
like really targeting on, I want to sell cucumbers to fish, and that's it. So like, tell me which fish you are and what kind of size cucumber you want. And that's it.
Mm.
Right? Those are your two variables, and that's fine. I don't really
Yeah.
care if sharks come along and also want cucumbers.
yeah.
But sharks don't eat
Yeah.
cucumbers; they eat the fish, so it's all good.
Yeah. Yeah.
Yeah.
Rightly put. Yep.
I mean, look, I absolutely think that, the UX and UI are number one, they're two different things.
Yeah.
It's crazy.
Entirely different. People confuse that a lot. That's what I've
Yeah.
seen.
Right. Like it's one thing to, have components that makes sense and laid out the right way. There's another thing about, like you said, giving people too many options or giving people just enough options, or how should the layout be? When you have multiple options, there's a science to it. There's a psychology to it. Like, it's a very
Yes.
specialized thing that,
Yep.
we in the DevOps community really do care about, but a lot of times it takes like folks who are specialized in that to really bring it to life. And those two people are generally, well, those folks are generally two different folks,
Mm.
right? But
Yes.
when you can put
Yes.
them together,
Yep.
and when this can be the same person, when you can have like, when you can, do both, if you will,
Yes. Yep.
that is special. And I think that's why, and I'm not a judge, Dan, you were a judge, but
Yeah,
um, could you attest to the fact that that was like the magic in this project?
yeah. I think so. There were a whole host of different projects. There were like adding like a remote UI, remote like runner for Chef and a bunch of other stuff. And so, oh, that's really technically amazing. And I think that like the UX is pretty good with that. So you kind of say that, and then you've got stylia stuff, and and then there's some really simple things like GitHub Actions for Azure stuff and that kind of stuff. And you're like, this is pretty good, pretty good. And then this one blew me away because I was just looked at it and just went, well, I could use that tomorrow. I could just use it. I could just go off and go, yeah,
Right.
it's really nice. And then and like I'm a sucker for good colors as well. So like transparency was just about right. Like and then sometimes I think I'm going to assume some of this stuff is like default Angular themes maybe. Like, because
Yes.
obviously
Yes.
I could still see the Angular buttons on it, and I was like, yeah,
Yep.
this is. I'm happy that I saw the Angular button still because I'm like, good, because it's a hackathon. I should still see
Right.
stuff like that kicking around.
Yeah.
Exactly.
Because
Don't
if
reinvent the wheel.
because like, well, if it looked too polished, I'd be like,
Hmm.
have you been doing this for 6 months, sir?
Yeah.
Right.
So I actually quite like rough edges around, like, especially around hackathons, because you're like, well, it's a
Mhm.
hackathon, and I want to see like the final idea, where it's going, and but this is just like stupid promising, like like the UX behind this, and it had a clear goal, like having a clear goal for me was kind of like it made it much easier to vote for or rank much higher because we can see what it's
Mhm.
going to do easy. No, like I'll go back to the was it inspect runner, is it GitHub Actions for Azure, inspect in Azure. Like it was super narrowly focused. It wasn't particularly hard code. It was like 30
Yeah.
lines of code, but I knew what it did.
Yes.
I knew how to use it. I could use it tomorrow. And you're like,
Yep.
well, that's brilliant. Like it doesn't have to be like the biggest groundbreaking idea in the world.
Yep.
Although this was just like, oh, it looks like a lot of work,
Yeah.
and it was really pretty, and I want to use it now.
Right. Right.
Right? Like,
Yeah.
why would you not give that loads of points? Because if you want to use it now, like that's that need that like wants to go and use that hackathon project right now. I think it's like speaks to well written code. So yeah, well done.
Absolutely.
That was the
Absolutely.
whole intent behind it. Like even I was like, okay, if I build something right, and if somebody has to spend days setting this up, this wouldn't make sense. It kind of beats the whole purpose of it, right?
Yeah,
So that's why I was like, okay, let's let's keep things generic, simple, and straightforward, and just limit things for now. We can always expand that later on, right? When it comes, whoever needs it, right? You can tailor it to your liking and your needs.
For sure. Do you plan on building off of the project, or like because
I
it's
do
very
actually. I do. Um I want to kind of rewrite this because the code is still. I know the code and I know what I've done. It's I wouldn't really say it's up to par or anything.
right,
It
right.
does what it's
It was a
built to
hackathon,
do.
so
Yeah. I mean, you can take it like dance it. It's what I had in mind when I wrote it. It's like you can take it, you can build it, and
Mhm.
you can use it for your own. But it's obviously it's this things with software developers. You write something few months back, you come to it, you're like, which
Right,
idiot wrote this, and
right.
this
And if you
can
don't,
be.
then there's something wrong with you. Like seriously.
Yes, yes, exactly. You think about it like, what was I thinking when I wrote this? Why
Hmm.
on earth would I do it, right? So yes, I do have plans. I'm just kind of finding it difficult to take the time out to actually spend some time on anything at all currently. Just a bit busy with
Yeah.
things. But
Right.
yes,
Sure.
I do plan on rebuilding it and putting it out in open source as usual, so
Nice.
anybody can take it, pick it up, and they can build it however they want it or however they want to use it.
That
Yeah,
is
I think that there's a nice thing about open source there, isn't it? Uh, if you've got a tool that is open source and people start using it and they're like, "Hey, so here's a PR that makes it better," and you're like,
Yeah.
"You're using my tool."
right.
I mean,
Yes.
thanks. I had a PR to
Yeah.
one of my tools the other day, and it was a Terraform module for doing something, and I was like, "Someone's using this." I mean, that's
Yes.
cool because like I wrote it for myself, probably much like you're doing for one push here, and then some people start using it, and they like may tailor it a little bit better, or they get rid of the angular icon or something silly like that, and they're like, "Hey, here's a better README, or here's a better thing," and you're like, "What's this?"
Yeah.
It's just really nice.
Right.
It's a really nice way of giving back to the project, isn't it? It's just a
Yeah.
tiny bit of code.
Yeah. Yeah.
It
Even when
really.
I start working, right, if I'm working on something, the very first place I go is on GitHub or GitLab. I'll
Mhm.
just
Right.
search for whatever's available there. Why do you want to reinvent the wheel? And if you see something
Exactly.
that you can improve, right, you are going to spend hours on making that thing from the scratch, right? If you can improve it, you can already take what's there, build on top of it, help everyone else, right?
Mhm.
Right.
That's
So I have this kind of problem with like chef cookbooks quite a lot of times. So I've authored a bunch of them and fixed a bunch of them and maintained more than I'd like to admit. But and then I see someone else create a new one, and you're like, why are you starting from scratch? This thing has got like 70 contributors. Why would you do that? And like,
Right.
and you're like, and you got to ask them. They're like, oh, so I'd really love to know why you're doing this. And it's like, well, it didn't quite fit my needs. And I was like, okay, fine, not a problem. But then internally, I'm like, but you could just make a pull request and we'd accept it and it'd be
yeah.
fine.
Yeah,
Yeah.
and I
And
mean,
then you would
and
make
it could be
everyone,
beneficial, right? Yeah,
mm,
it will be
right,
beneficial for hundred of other people, right? You don't know.
Yep.
That's
yeah.
the beauty of open source.
That
You can
is.
exploit it however you want, though.
Oh, exactly.
Yeah,
Although some people,
it's
and I'm probably, I've definitely been in this camp in the past, where
Uh-huh.
I've looked at a project and gone, doesn't quite do what I want it to do, and I'm too afraid to make a pull request or submit something to that project, or that group of people are too important. They wouldn't want my pull request,
yeah,
Well, that's
or you see it and you're like, you just get put off. So you're
right.
like, oh, just start
yeah,
main thing. It's easier. It's less scary.
yes.
And you're like, okay,
It's that.
Yeah.
It's
I mean, like it just doesn't
yeah, go
seem
ahead.
well, I just feel like, open source communities just don't give out that vibe to me. But I don't know. I could definitely be optimistic and go and submit some code, and then they're like, "What in the world are you even doing?" Because I mean, for
Yeah,
me, it was more so like when I was super inexperienced with you know development in general. It was like intimidating. I could feel that intimidating feeling. trying to go and submit a pull request. But
Yeah.
it just, yeah.
I remember
And I
trying to
mean,
submit to Chef
Mhm.
okay.
years ago, and that was like, do I want to do this? And just it's the thing, like,
Do it.
just do it. It's fine. Like, if you submit a Ruby, like the best ones, the least scary ones, I think are. Have either of you submitted patches to just readmes before? Like,
I have not. I've not done that. Not yet.
It does seem like the best way to
like
go.
just markdown fixes, like just fix some typos, fix
But it
like
is good.
layout stuff.
Yeah.
Like it like one, it doesn't really harm the product, because if you
Yeah.
get it wrong, all right, like you fix the
Right.
typo, maybe you
Yeah.
try and change it. Doesn't matter. Like, it's much lower stakes. So and then you've got the foot in your door, and then and then you can, like, oh, the maintainers know me now. So you're not first time
Right.
contributor, and then you're like, well, it's fine. So then you can lure yourself into a false sense of security. That was my get in there.
Hmm.
It's still there. What you said, right? A lot of people still feel that, right? And there's this thing called imposter syndrome. I'm not sure if
Yep.
Yeah,
you've come, right.
we
Yes,
I
we all
think
feel that every day.
For
it's
sure.
on our roadmap to do a talk about.
Imposter
Okay.
syndrome.
Mm-hmm.
Yes. Let's
Yes.
do it.
Yes.
Let's
It's an
do it.
interesting topic. I'm sure everyone relates to it, be it a fresher or be it 20 plus years of experience with people.
Yeah.
It
Yeah.
happens. It happens.
Yeah.
We'll
It
have to get you back on at some point to
does.
talk about imposter syndrome. So I think we might get a bunch of our guests on after a few months and talk about imposter syndrome, because I think we've all felt it at some point.
Yep.
Yeah.
I
Absolutely.
think it's like weird, humbling thing that your body tries to do. Your mind tries to be like you're not, like,
Yeah.
no one knows you. You're nobody, and you're like. And I spoke to, I think it was Joshua Timberman from Chef, and I was like, I'm not sure I've met you in person, Josh. And he was like, yeah, you've met me back in this date. And then I'm like, sorry, you remember from like 10 years ago meeting me for the first time? I was basically a nobody to him at that point. And he was like, oh yeah, he does awesome stuff in the community. It's brilliant. Yeah, whatever. And I'm like, sorry, what? Like,
Right.
I haven't, like, figured he just had no idea who I was. And I always assume that people don't know who I am. So it's much easier that way. But then you find out people do know who you are, and you're like, oh, okay, that's actually quite nice.
Right.
Always catches you by
Or what
surprise.
do you know?
You're like,
You know me. Okay, well, what do you know? That's what I always say.
what do I don't know?
All right. Right. Exactly. Exactly.
Yeah,
Cool.
that's pretty cool.
So
We
I've
should-
got one last question.
Hmm.
You know, I don't want to start any fights, but tabs or spaces, bro?
Tabs. I mean, I don't really
Oh,
even
you're
have
a
to give it a
Python
thought.
programmer though. I saw you use some Python in
Yes.
it, so you can't.
Yes. See, it's
help it.
Python and it's Python and it's the laziness. Why do I have to space? Just when I can just do it just with one tab. Why do you want to exert extra pressure?
So
Why?
I'm like, I use the tab, but it does tabs to spaces. So
Yeah.
I'm like, let it do it.
Oh, you talking about your linter or something? Does tabs to spaces? Wait, what did you say?
So whatever, like Ruby doesn't care about spacing.
Even
Uh,
Python 2 is something that you can mix tab in spaces. It's the Python 3 that you
Yeah.
have to be like, pick either of them.
Yeah. To be honest, just pick tabs with Python. Just deal with it. Like,
Yep.
it's
It
fine.
makes life easier. It makes life easier.
okay.
I mean, there's just one con of using tab is like every other operating system takes tab as different, because if you see, right, you can switch the tab count from 4 5 if you see in the editor. That's the problem. That's where I just but it's hardly a case it happens.
I mean,
but yes, there are people like that.
put your tab space on 6 in Vim, and you're like, and if you're writing any Python, you're like, and I guess it's to stop you from indenting your code too much and
Yes.
putting nests within nests within nests,
Yeah.
and things you just shouldn't do.
Yeah.
So you're like, well, I'm over here now. So maybe I should stop
Right.
there.
That's
Right.
exactly what it ends up looking like.
Make it a method. I'm totally with you. I think maybe I'm a secret tab person. Oh no!
Oh,
What have I
wow.
omitted
Are you
on
Revelation,
air? I think I
new,
might have done
new
it.
revelation.
right? The first step is like recognizing you have a problem, John.
Yes.
Maybe I've written too much Python. There isn't such a thing. It's really nice to write, isn't it? Though
It is. It's,
if
I
you
mean,
accept tabs and spaces and you just get over yourself at that point, I think Python's a really nice language.
yes, it is. I mean, once you start, I mean, Python, I have worked in Ruby as well. It's not much that different. But one thing with Python is once you understand it, right, it's literally pseudocode. So anytime
Ah,
Mhm.
you're trying to think, right, it's always easier to think in pseudocode what you will do. You write
true.
pseudocode and then you realize, hey, I've written a Python program.
Yeah,
End of day.
yeah,
That
So
you
yeah,
know what? That's true. Everybody says every time um at one point in my engineering career, I always, I wanted to do Fang, right? And they were like, if you want to pass one of those Fang interviews, you better learn Python because, like, don't try to like pass one of those interviews in C# because why?
yeah.
No, seriously,
The
they're brutal, but Python makes it easy.
I
yeah,
think
it's
there was a
I juggle in both. Go ahead, Dan. Go ahead, Dan. Yeah.
I think there was a patch to core Python that was rejected for being too complicated and not readable. It was I can't remember who it was. One of the core maintainers was like, "No, we're not accepting this patch. It's very clever. It's very fast Python or very fast code. It's unmaintainable and unreadable. So no." And that's like,
Okay.
and that was not that many years ago. Actually, I mean less than 3 or 4 years ago.
Kudos to
And
them.
I think that's a really nice way of like that. That is Python, though, isn't it? Like that's the core
Hmm.
idealism of Python is it's making it readable, accessible
Yeah.
to everybody. And if you've
Yes.
suddenly got this weird way of doing things, that's really like esoteric, very hard to maintain, like part of core
Yeah.
Python. You're like, well, apparently it doesn't count for
Non
everybody.
Pythonic way. Yeah.
Yeah,
What people would like to call it as Pythonic or non Pythonic way.
yeah,
Mm-hmm.
yeah. And I think Ruby is kind of like Ruby gets a bit funny sometimes with some of the syntax, from the Lambda syntax.
Hmm. Hmm.
But I think it definitely steers towards the same camp as Ruby and Python definitely are in the same,
Yes. Yep.
trying to be way more readable than other languages,
Yep. Yep.
which is nice.
And you pick either of them, right? You kind of get the other one easily. It's not really that different if you see, right?
Yeah,
It's relatively easier.
yeah. And then you go and like pick up Java, and you're like
Yeah.
It was the
non
opposite
exception
way for
suddenly.
me. Right. It's like, what do you mean it's not object oriented? I don't even what I really started with object oriented code. Like
Yeah.
I
Yeah,
really
Yeah,
did.
it's the
I
go-to,
started
right?
with C
It's the
sharp.
go-to language for OOPS. It's the go-to language for OOPS, Java. So I'm not sure if it's with just me or with you too. I mean, every time I think of OOPS, I'm thinking of C sharp or Java. That's how my
Yeah.
mind works. And if I'm thinking anything else than OOPS, that's Python all the way.
yeah,
So not
Aha.
sure if it's for you too. It happens. So that's what I was saying. Like in any of these interviews or just I try to do lead code from time to time, like very randomly. So it's like it depends on what I'm trying to uh, do in that. If at some point I feel like link in C sharp is going to solve my problem, I'll switch the editor to C sharp.
Yeah.
Otherwise, if I know if it's something going for Python, a loop, something that's already inbuilt, obviously that's a Python for given.
yeah. That's
Yeah.
pretty
That
nice.
makes sense. That is quite
What are
nice.
your go-to languages, Kaya? You C
Mine?
sharp
Uh,
and
Oh yeah. C sharp, JavaScript, and C
okay.
sharp, those two.
I
But
think
like modern JavaScript, like React.
yeah, I think I'm probably a
Yeah.
TypeScript person. If you're counting
TypeScript is
JavaScript
cool.
area, I'm usually like I think we talked about this before. I started learning JavaScript, and then I was like, actually TypeScript, and then I was like, oh, this is too hard. I don't know what I'm doing.
mm,
I went back to JavaScript, and I was like, no, this is hell. I went back to TypeScript, and I was like, oh, it's just much nicer. I've got typing now. or at
Yes.
least
Yeah,
like sudo typing. The
Yeah.
part that is TypeScript.
right. I
Yeah,
mean, these
it's
long with type languages are kind of like
Yeah.
where, I mean, but you know, I don't know. You kind of have to, in order to be a full stack dev nowadays, and you don't know like a
mm,
modern JavaScript
Mm.
framework. It's kind of like you can't really exist anymore, right?
no.
Yeah, correct.
Like,
That's
Yeah,
that's the problem. And I mean, JavaScript is all good and amazing, right? It's fine. It's everywhere. But it's kind of become a norm now. I not sure. I think 3 years ago I didn't even know JavaScript. I kind of hated it, honestly. I was like, I started right, and I was like, no, sorry, I'm just
nobody
going to
likes
stick
it.
to C sharp. Yeah, I was like, I'm going to stick to C sharp for now.
Yeah,
That's what I'll be building on. And I got put into a project, and they were using Angular there, so I'm like, okay, I
yeah,
have to do it at some point. So what the
yeah,
hell? It's just get
right,
on with it.
yeah. And I
right.
think I think you're getting just on with it. Like won you
Yeah.
the best, most promising idea for this hackathon, really. Because
Yeah, for sure.
the large part of it, I think the thing that really shone was the UI and the Angular part of it. To be honest,
Yep.
so just
Absolutely,
I think that it speaks for just giving it a go.
Yeah,
for
exactly.
sure.
And and also it didn't really take that much of time. It's I would have used vanilla JS, but I was like,
Why would
it's
you do that
easier
to
with.
yourself?
Yeah,
Why would
exactly. And I
you?
was like, yeah, I am trying to experiment. I'm just not trying to kill myself. And it's
Right? Why would you even
just
like?
get on with Angular and
No.
start this thing. No, that's
No,
yeah,
it's
Right.
one of those things that if you try to learn too much stuff at once, you learn none of it.
exactly. Yeah.
Exactly.
Yes. Yes.
Exactly.
Yes.
Yeah,
Wow. So I know we're coming up on time.
yeah.
And I really, 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 really enjoyed. I think we both really enjoyed having you on, Drove. Um, is there anything else that you want to call out? Like, are there any shout outs you want to do before we wrap it up?
Uh, yeah, just to the chef team as well. I mean, it was a pretty amazing hackathon. Not just saying because I won it. It's there. I mean, I love the idea of coding for good, something that you're building for good. You know, so shout out to chef team for actually coming up with this one and giving us this time to go through it. And it's been amazing. It's something new learned. Definitely, it's there. So yeah, shout out to the chef team. It's been amazing, guys.
Awesome.
And
Thank
thank you
you.
for
Thank
having
you
me
so
here.
much. Shout out to you.
Oh,
Look, shout out to
and
you. And what's up?
well, so yeah, I was going to shout to you. I've also got one more shout out before I hit the end stream button.
Go ahead and do it.
So we've got a webinar in an hour.
Yes.
In
You're
fact,
doing the
oh no,
webinar.
it's not an hour. It's half an hour, and I'm going to get
Oh,
off this call and have a 15-minute going to close
what's
my eyes
up?
for 15 minutes and zone
Yeah,
out. But if
stretch out.
you're like, I'm totally plugging this because
Plug
um,
it.
this is my last 2 days of my life, basically. It's going to be interesting if you like compliance phase and that kind of stuff and infra. So if you like Inspec, if you like infra client and you want to know about the new compliance phase improvements in 17, me and Tim, so the product manager for infra, will be talking about that in half an hour. And it's if you just go to chef.io/webinars and you might have to type in the whole URL, it's on that page there. If I just
Awesome.
I'm just going to prove
Yes.
it. Yeah,
Go
it's on there.
watch.
It's like the first webinar there because it's
All
in
right.
like half an hour. But yeah, so I needed to shout out my own thing that I'm doing in half an hour because
Heck
I'm like,
yeah. Yeah. Look. So yeah, if you are look, if you want to see Dan in his element, like definitely check out that webinar because I'm gonna be tuning in and getting informed. So that'll be awesome.
well, thank you. At
Thank
least we got one viewer. We're good. We're good. I'm sorted.
Yeah, we'll get one more after the restream done. It's getting a bit late for me, so I'll restream it tomorrow.
Yeah,
But
brilliant.
Sounds
yes,
good.
another
Sounds
viewer.
good.
Yeah,
All right.
We'll
Thank you so much, Drew, for joining us. This was great. We really enjoyed it. And yeah, so until next time, y'all.
take it
yeah.
easy.
Bye.